If you're still sat here and still thinking, I've got £10 to donate and I want it to go to a food pack for Gaza, maybe don't have the fundraising event and maybe don't invite those people.
Yeah.
Do we need a dawah stall in the first place? Like, it just seems like it hasn't changed since the 80s. I think at least 50% of charities in the UK should shut down. The number of wasted resources, the amount of duplication in our industry, another charity raising more funds separately to give it to the same supplier so that they can deliver in the same way, just with a different hat and a different badge and a different box. It just doesn't make sense whatsoever.
And we've got 50 million sat here, by the way, Saj. So tell us
what we should do with that first.
Yeah.
Right? We should be spending, first of all, on...
So Saj, we've got you in because you're probably one of the best people I know about branding, marketing in the UK right now, particularly in the Muslim community. You're also the CEO, or were the former CEO of Charity, right? Which was a pretty sizable charity by the time you left. You've also been an entrepreneur. You've running your current business, which I want to dig into. And you're also one of the foremost experts on the subject of Bradford, which is close to many people's hearts.
I think I'll agree with Bradford part. Everything else, I think you need to open up your network, find more people in marketing, find more people. But alhamdulillah, yeah, I've done a few of those things, I guess.
And we're going to talk a lot about entrepreneurship and branding and marketing throughout this episode. But I want to start with a brand that all of us care about. And I think it's a brand that's taking massive hits at the moment. And I would love your thoughts on how we rescue this brand. And that's brand Islam, brand Muslims. Where have we gone wrong?
First thing I think with any of this stuff is, as marketeers, we're problem solvers. Naturally, that's what we love doing, right? We love to take a problem and think, okay, well, how would we do it in a perfect scenario? The worst marketeers are the ones that would say, okay, this is how we've done stuff. Let's just improve it, and they don't walk away and say, well, actually, let's look at doing something completely different. For example, the first thing is we need to verify that we do have a bad image.
True.
Like, there's an internal image that we have of what Muslims are like. For example, I was watching this YouTube video, as you do, on... by the way, I'm not on any platform anymore. I deleted all my socials. Yeah? So as a marketing guy, I don't have a lot of socials. But I was watching YouTube, this video. And, we've got this perception of Muslims are not united. And as an ummah, we need to be united. And most of us don't know what that means, right? We're united at Jummah because there's no parking and there's thousands of people in every single mosque, right? So we're united in some way, shape, or form. But internally, we have this image that we're not united, right? And I was watching this video, and there's this Hindu guy in India, and he goes, "Dekho ye Musliman, look at these Muslims, they are so united." And I was like, there's a perception externally, there's a perception internally, and I think sometimes before we make that jump, it's like, okay, well,
true.
How do you think we're seen? And then let's go verify, do other people actually see us like that? Yeah. And before we start solving a problem, so if we were going to solve the problem of brand Islam, if there was a problem, first and foremost, right? First, we would go and figure out from other people, the people that are watching, or the people that we're actually worried about or concerned about, is like, they're the people that are looking at Islam as a whole, or Muslims in the community. What do they think about us? And even that would be a process in itself. And again, we're going into maybe just too deep into marketing already.
Let me give you the bear case, right? Someone might turn around and say, so this is how I think Islam is perceived outside of the Muslim community. I think most of the time people don't really think about Islam and Muslims anyway because it's not important to them. But when they do, they probably have these buzzwords which are lurking in the background, which is things like these days migrants and maybe hijab, backwards, very ghettoized and focused within the community and not really part of our British values. And at the same time, maybe there'll be some positive stuff as well, which is that you've got the food or the Sufi aspect of it, and you've got the Middle East, which is quite cool to visit, somewhere like Dubai or Morocco. We like that. Or Turkey, perhaps. I think that's what brand Islam is right now. Do you think that's fair?
I think that, again, is the person who's looking at it. So, for example, a lot of times Muslims are branded those things, right? But within that, we're different. And same as the person who's probably looking at Islam, depending on who you are, what experience you've had. If you've lived out in the Middle East and you've had a really good experience with people in Saudi, for example, or Qatar, you might come back and think, Muslims are all right. I know a lot of those guys, and the inshallah, mashallah words and all the rest of it. And you're perfectly okay with that environment now. all right? Or you might have some friends that you're doing business with, and all of a sudden your perception of Islam is not, oh, they're not migrants, they're not X, Y, and Z. They get the whole picture, right? Or you might work in politics, whatever it might be. I think it's just breaking those down. So if you were just going to do a very basic exercise and say, well, there's 3 different audiences. There's the guy or the sister who's gone out, they've had a really good experience with Muslims, or somewhere they've experienced a really good interaction with a Muslim, maybe the doctor, whatever it might be. Yeah, so my doctor's Muslim, so I'm all right with you guys. Really cool with you guys. And they're all pro-Muslim, right? They're all like, yep, you guys belong here, we're one community, all the rest of it. Then you might have this middle space where people are like, well, I haven't decided yet.
Don't really care.
Yeah, whatever. Everybody can do what they want, and I don't care, and just don't get in my way and carry on, right? And then you might have a group, there's all assumptions, right? You might have a group who's like what you're just saying, right?
Reform.
Migrants need to get out of this country. It's our country. You're brown, blah, 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 and all the rest of it. So if we were looking at brand Islam and we said, actually, we need to change it, first of all, we'd say, well, how big is that community? And I guess in the UK now, there's probably a growing community, right? Reform is like, all right, if it's getting some headway, then maybe it's a growing sort of concern for us, right? But then we know, for a start, where those people are. Like we would say, all right, are they based out in Blackpool or Sunderland, or are they based in Tower Hamlets? We've got to figure some of those things out. But I think, look, brand Islam itself, if we were just going to be using sort of some assumptions, yes, it's migrants and people that are backwards and they don't speak the right language and X, Y, and Z. And I think we don't help ourselves in that respect, right? If anybody listens to my rants or reads my rants on LinkedIn, it's usually that, like, we aren't helping ourselves. I went to the IRA convention a few weeks ago. I think we met there. And there was this whole session on how to improve the dawah stall, and I was like, why aren't we asking the question? Do we need a dawah stall in the first place? Like, it just seems like it hasn't changed since the 80s. So, just like I was saying to some of the guys there, I was saying, if I'm walking in the street and I hear that usually our black brothers on the mic talking about Jesus Christ and they're handing out leaflets and all the rest of it, I walk over the road with my family, right? So we'll go that way, or we'll just walk around. Like, I'm not taking a leaflet. I'm not listening to anything this man is saying. And we've almost adopted the same style, right? We need to be on the street. We need to be giving dawah. We need to be handing out Qurans. And nothing seems to have changed. So for us to even start this conversation about brand Islam and the change, the first thing we probably need to look at is, what are we doing? How are we doing it? And what needs to change in that to be able to achieve our goal of saying, okay, brand Islam at the moment is, with this community, is showing negative, minus whatever. It needs to get to a positive at least. Or at least a stable zero, so that it's not seen in a bad light.
All right, so let's put more specificity on there, right? And let's think about it from the prophetic way. I think the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam would want us to be calling people to Islam.
Yep.
Ultimately, we want to give the message of Islam to them. Probably that's the most important thing, actually. Other things and why we would care about brand Islam to make ourselves feel good or protected is actually by the by, really. That's the main thing. So you're now in charge of, we are now the co-CEOs of brand Islam, and we have to try and improve this situation. And I'm asking myself the same question right now. And what I'm thinking is that there's maybe there needs to be like a tripartite approach, where one is the political, the second is perhaps the media, and then the third is local community, is a thought that I have, where you kind of need to attack all three at the same time. So you have the messaging hitting at different levels and, increasing in volume.
Yeah, like any campaign that you were running for anything, if you were selling shampoo, it would be the same. The philosophy of it would be exactly the same. You would look at what could we do on a media scale, on a large scale, where we're just raising awareness and maybe just changing perceptions. Just something that you look at and think, I'm not quite sure, but it's a billboard, it's an advert or whatever it might be. And it included, and also that is like film and the arts. Like, we don't understand how important it is to have positive characters in just mainstream media, in anything, film, television, whatever it might be, even in books. Just to have, like, I remember when the Marvels had, a hijabi or a Muslim girl in the kind of the series. It was like, oh my God, it's amazing, right? But it generally does help, like, change perceptions. Like, okay, these are just regular people like us, and that's how the Prophet ﷺ was. He was just a regular person in amongst his community, right? I think there's that aspect of it. But then I think one of the mistakes that maybe we've made over the years is we've run these kind of campaigns. We've run it so it's just been switched on and then switched switched off. I don't know if you're old enough, Ibrahim, to remember, inspired by Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, there was a campaign in the UK which ran. It was billboards, it was TV advertising, it was all this sort of stuff. I think this is probably sort of mid 2000s. But it was a campaign on its own. It had great traction, to be honest, and there was lots of negativity that came from it as well. But the fact that we ran something and it was there. The problem was there was no sustained effort after that. And where you see that campaigns and people do, or organizations do really well, that it's sustained. So it's not a matter of, okay, we've got £1 million, let's spend it in 8 weeks delivering a campaign, then we'll go back to sleep and then think what we should do in another 6 months' time. It's like any brand, you've got to be front and center again and again and again and again and again until subconsciously you've accepted the reality, this new reality. And we haven't got to that stage yet where we've been able to just, as an organization, or any organization, or as a community, being able to sustain that effort more than anything else. And the things that we have done, those negative stereotypes, we have sustained. So double parking outside of Jummah, we have sustained that. So we know now if a mosque goes up, it means all this stuff because it's just a recognized stereotype.
All right, so let's start with the community, right? So that's at the moment a negative trait, that we are branding ourselves negatively to the external by doing certain things in the community. People listening right now, maybe there's one or two things that you think actually, if all of us started doing that at the local community level, that could actually really start shifting brand Islam at the community level. What do you think?
I think some things are basics. I know I might get slack for this, but like the clothes that we wear. Like sometimes, like it's weird because my kids are 19 and 16, right? And both of them love wearing Pakistani salwar kameez, right? And those, and I'm walking around with them as a 40-year-old man with my jeans and my tee on, and they've got thobes and salwar kameez on. But like some of the conversation that we normally have is that even though it's perfectly fine to wear all that stuff and all the rest of it, right? It's your cultural dress, you can wear what you want. But like there is a perception with that. Islam starts to look like it's a foreign thing, which it's not. It's meant to be everywhere.
Yeah.
Right, and it's meant to be organic wherever it is. But we haven't found some of those things, and I know it's quite a simple thing of just clothing, but our clothing isn't native to this country. We haven't figured out, well, actually, we just can have modest dress and it can be here, especially for men. Like for sisters, there's a little bit more kind of, stringent approach. But yeah, it's a bit more complicated, right?
But there's now modest fashion, right? That's a whole thing now.
Exactly. Even if it was just adopting like the current fashion trend of, okay, it's floral season or whatever, I don't know what we're going to do, right? But it's pink season, so everybody's wearing pink in those days, or it's black season. Most likely, people are wearing black. But for guys especially, and for younger people, like how they dress, what they look like, is it compulsory for kids to wear thobes to go to madrasa at the age of 6? Like probably not. But they're seen as they've got a thobe on, they've got a hat on, they've had a stressful day at school anyway. Now they've got another uniform to wear, and it's not the same uniform, right? Just another uniform. And it seems like that's what we did when we integrated and we were doing all our stuff. And now we're back to like being the foreigners again with our salwar kameezes and our thobes and all the rest of it. And I think obviously it's complicated again, right? With this kind of idea of is it a sunnah to wear it and is it not a sunnah to wear it and all the rest of it. And I'm not going to go into that, but I'm just saying perception-wise, something very simple of it's just like how the chicken tikka masala now has been adopted as just a national dish of the country, right? It's not a foreign thing anymore. You'll see some white British people eating more curry than we can consume sometimes. We move over to lasagnas and pastas, right? But that's the reality. Like it needs to be accepted like that. And our dress code and our way of life needs to be accepted like that.
All right. So we've now all started dressing a little bit more thoughtfully about where we're going. Like for Eid Salah, I think I'm gonna wear.
Yeah, we have an exception.
Well, that one day of the year.
Fine.
But then, okay, we can start dressing in a certain way. Are there other things that we could be doing? I'm thinking food banks, because I'm thinking at the community level, the negative that you gave was something that affects others in a way that's quite harmful. But is there a way that we can be quite positive, right? The Sikhs, for example, the Sikhs are known for their quite colourful and quite, they like to give out food, and that's a thing that's known in the community. Maybe what could the Muslims be doing that becomes this, thing?
I mean, the real issue is that we should be people that are solving problems. Like the Muslims should be just known as they're the guys that've got a solution for pretty much anything. And I think there's this distinction sometimes when we're looking at like some of these things. Obviously, as Muslims, we just love to feed. Whether it's your neighbor, your friends, your family, your cousins, or just the general public. We love to, or yourself, right? We just love to. We have this kind of affection with food, right? And I think that's okay. But looking at real problems like why are Muslims not taking on housing as an issue in their community? Why they're not taking on homelessness as an issue in their community? Why not taking on drug abuse in their community? We seem to shy away from some of those things. And the easy route sometimes, the easy route is to say, oh, we'll just open a food bank, we'll just open a soup kitchen because it's a nice thing to do. And more, sometimes more importantly, it makes you feel good.
Yeah.
A complicated bid to the council to ask for reform on housing is a lot more complicated than, and it's boring compared to, right, I put on my high-vis jacket and I'm going to go down on Saturday night, I'm going to give out some food and meet Dave and Beth and I'll feel better for myself. Like, there is a difference. And I think that, changing subject, the charity sector is flawed with the same issues, unfortunately. Like, we've got so comfortable with when we have this conversation about Palestine that, and take a deep breath, when we talked about this issue of Palestine, is that all of our solution up until maybe a year ago has been food aid and emergency aid and medical aid and everything aid. Only, I think, recently are we waking up to thinking, well, actually, it has no utility in the current world. At the moment, we can't get a single loaf of bread into Gaza. What use has that been? And I remember those words of a mufti that came from Palestine, and we asked him, like, what should we do as a community in the UK? What support do you need? And he said, don't send money. We don't need any financial support. What we need you to do is get stronger in London, get stronger in New York, get stronger in the Western countries where you're actually going to be able to have real impact over the next 10, 15, 20 years. And it's so true. Like, you look at it now where to a certain degree, you're helpless, right? Like, you look at the kind of videos, you look at all that sort of stuff and think, what am I able to do? You know? And it's flawed with that whole approach of, like, we haven't looked at solutions. And I'll go back to what I said at the beginning, that marketeers need to be looking at solutions, but generally charities need to be looking at solutions. What's the solution? If you said now that collectively, let's say, for example, the charities are sitting on, sorry, we've gone to charities now, yeah. Sorry, Ibrahim. Collectively, so let's say charities are sat on a couple of £100 million.
Yeah.
And we said, with this couple of £100 million, what we want to do is change the fate, the stress that the Palestinians are under at the moment. What should we do? And we had a blank canvas and there was nobody employed in a charity and there were no charities that existed. What would we do with it? That's the approach that we need to take. And I can guarantee you this, that anybody who says that we should be providing and collecting funds for food packs at the moment should not be on the, not be part of the conversation.
Yeah.
Right? It's just that we're there now. And that's what we've been doing, and we don't know any better. So we'll say, we'll give 1% to lobby groups, maybe.
But then what I would push back to, Sajad, is that the charities, some of these charities, they're raising tens and tens of millions from digital marketing, social media, all of these kind of events going on. And they would say that that branding seems to work, that marketing seems to work for the Muslim community. They were willing to donate to that, but they are not willing to donate to more complicated causes, such as we're going to lobby. And by the way, I'm fully on your side, as you well know, right? But they're not going to understand. And we've tried it before, some of them say, and people don't donate to that.
And my question, who cares? Like, if people stop donating and they stop donating to Palestine right now because they can't see a food pack and they can't see a crying child, no problem. But fine, let's not raise 300 million from the charities. Let's raise 5. That's more important to raise that 5 million than it is to raise the 300 million right now.
Yeah.
And it can seem controversial because you're looking at the screens and you're thinking, I can see what's happening there. But the reality on the ground will be that, inshallah, when the gates open and there is, the blockade is lifted and everything else and food finally starts making its way in, countries will be making the donations. Like, all those countries that are sat around there now feeling guilty as to what's happening, and more non-Muslim, or I don't want to say Muslim countries, like, because there's no such thing as a Muslim country, but those Muslim majority countries that are feeling guilty, they'll be donating. But also, the rest of the world will be making a donation. So our £100 million, our £50 million, our £30 million that's coming from the UK, or if you're a small charity and you're raising 5-7 million, it's not going to make a massive difference. And this is where we need to be a bit more
fine. So it's very hard for me to push back to that because I'm sat here normally saying the same thing. But then with your marketing hat on, what should these charities be doing to try and move that needle from raising 2 million, 5 million towards that 50 million that they can achieve? It's almost like cheap marketing, right? Because it's easy to, and I don't mean this a crass way, but if you've got a starving child or something, people want to, at a visceral level, donate to that. Whereas if you've got a picture of an MP that you want to raise donations, you want to raise a donation for an MP, it's not as viscerally. How would you say to a charity that, okay, you now accept my point of view, the right point of view, that this is the more impactful way of giving? let's market that. Let's help me as a charity CEO market that. How should I do that?
So I think the first thing is that let's not get lost in the numbers. The right thing to do is the right thing to do.
Yeah.
Right. And
Okay.
we're both in agreement on that. So if we're in agreement that what we should be doing is, well, let's just say we shouldn't be spending any more effort, any more energy on raising more funds for food for medical aid right now.
Agreed.
Right. There's enough sat in the banks. And if we were going to diversify, I think the first thing is that every charity that's...
And we've got 50 million sat here, by the way, Saj.
Yeah.
So tell us
what we should do with that first.
Yeah.
Right? We should be spending, first of all, on marketing, the first and foremost. Like I think the stats that I read when after October, where it was, I hate to keep using October 7th or 8th as a landmark. Now we should remove that because it seems like everybody seems like that's the time everything started, right? So since October, I think within the first 2 weeks of the genocide starting, I think the IDF spent 9 million within the first 2 weeks to make sure that the propaganda that they had to get out was fully immersed with people. Like everybody knew what the hell was going on, right? And that's not just the Muslim community, because we'll have our own sources of information, all the rest of it. But for the rest of the world, what an atrocity. And they had spent 9 million making sure that people got that message. We're miles away from that, right? And a lot of times, even when we're doing, like I recommended to a couple of charities that were looking to get registered for Palestinian causes or for food bank causes. I said, in our constitutions, in our governing documents, we should have a whole element on media. We should have a whole element based on causes. Like if we are fighting for the Palestinian cause, that includes anything and everything that might be able to do legally for the Palestinian people. So if that means running a marketing campaign, you should be able to say, yeah, we're one of those organizations that run marketing campaigns. It's crazy because some of these things, they're I guess, similar experience that I've had with Manza, right? Without going too far away from the subject, that you need to be able to show success, and success breeds success. Once you've had a little bit of success and people have seen, well, actually, that was a great campaign from our community, and we actually turned around. And, Dave at work, Dave's our token white guy, Dave at work and Barbara, they were talking about, oh, yeah, they saw those kids in Palestine and they're also joining the march because of the video that we've been promoting and we spent 2 million promoting. Then people will actually say, well, actually, it's worth investing in this sort of stuff. And I think there has been a turning point over the last 6 months, I'd say. Probably not longer, but 6 months definitely, where people have said, all right, what else can I give to? I don't want to give to food anymore. What else can I do? What else can I do? And that frustration, whatever. So I think the first thing is we start investing marketing, actual marketing campaigns, thought out campaigns that last a certain period of time and they have a clear objective of what we want to do at the end. If you just imagine how much the charities are probably spending on advertising on Google, Facebook, Insta, whatever they're spending the money on right now, just to bring in more donations. We're probably asking to spend the same amount, but just on advocacy instead. That's a form of advocacy that we can have. And nobody's saying, well, actually, look, just like, lobby groups, we're going to start paying politicians. Well, it's part of the mix, but it could be a lot further down the line once we get to kind of, okay, well, what does that business look like? But for now, just being able to fight our own corner and make sure that we've got some of that support, then great. Like, the work of Cage, for example, at the moment, it is an offensive position. It is a position where we're saying, actually, we're going to go to town and we'll actually say, well, that's not correct. You've done something incorrect there. We should be holding you accountable for that. And I would say even going one step further, because it's still a form of defense. Like somebody's doing something and you're reacting to it. What's our offense to any of this stuff? And what you'll find is that a lot of times especially when we speak about Palestine, most of the people that are pro-genocide, let's say, they have a very offensive position. And we're always in the defensive position. We're always saying, well, okay, now that this has happened, let's see how we should deal with it. And we're not proactively looking at stuff.
And it's an interesting point. And I want to go back to what else this charity can do to convince Muslims as well to donate to this stuff, because I think that's their probably, if you boil it down, that's their really weak point. And they're trying to figure out how, if we can unlock that, we can actually unlock a whole bunch of things. So I'd love to get your thoughts on that. But I want to jump to this episode of Sky News, or this documentary that Sky News put out a few days ago, where this senior reporter, he went into the West Bank, white guy, non-Muslim on the face of it, and he was showing how much land has been stolen by these colonizers. And the interesting thing is how aggressive these guys are, and it's picking off your point about how we're on the defensive and they're always on the offensive. Like, they're the colonizer, they've stolen this guy's farm, and even if he appears on a hill nearby, immediately they come over with weapons to let him know that we're not messing around. And they're not messing around. They will literally kill people. So And I think it got me thinking that that's a microcosm of how bristlingly aggressive this the other side is, and how they are willing to just put all the chips in every single time, every time. You've got billionaires, the Epstein crowd. You've got billionaires who just went all in with their billions, their entire wealth, to support this cause. And I guess my question is, how do we use the resources that we have, perhaps marketing, perhaps other resources, to build a spine for the Muslim community, and trying to diagnose how can we address this.
I don't think this is just necessarily a marketing thing. Like even as marketeers, even as marketeers, like most of the time when we speak to a business or we speak to an organization, what we're actually doing is becoming business consultants. So like a lot of the times when we've even consulted on marketing, it's meant that the business has changed. It was actually, we found a new market for you, and so actually let's start with that and let's forget these laws. So some of this stuff is really just, stripping back and saying, okay, what do we actually want to achieve? If every single person in the UK, for example, is our goal, that everybody in the UK now knows the truth about Palestine. That's as much as we can possibly do, right? And exactly what's happening there. And we change that opinion to a pro-Palestinian opinion, right? And against genocide. Then what do we need to be able to do to make sure that happens? Now, whether that's community activity, whether that's running a film festival with lots of screenings of lots of different films and inviting everybody, whether that's just sharing food, whether that's a Ramadan project that we need to look at to say, okay, how do we make sure that non-Muslims are participating in our Ramadan activity so that we can change their opinions? Like, what do we need to do? Does it need a tweet from Mo Salah, for example? What does it need for people to start waking up and saying, oh, actually, we could start doing that? That's quite impressive. And you'll find there's a chain reaction with some of that stuff. But it just needs a holistic approach, if that makes sense. Like, it doesn't need like, okay, what can we do in marketing and branding? It needs people, Agreed. It needs resources, it needs, yes, some media stuff, but it needs a whole ecosystem approach more than anything else.
Yeah.
But these are the kind of things that, to a certain degree, this is why my LinkedIn is a rant after rant. It's because a lot of times when I look at this stuff, I think it's not complicated. And maybe I'm sort of from the outside looking in now and it doesn't seem complicated. But my biggest frustration is that as a community, a lot of the stuff that we've been doing for a long time. And it seems like if you look back and said, all right, what have I been doing in the last 5 years as the charity CEO? Am I still doing the same activity? And if I am, I shouldn't be here. And it's funny, like that's the reason I parted with Charity Right. Because I remember 2000, probably just after COVID, 20, I was planning for the next year, and it felt quite easy. I was just sat down and saying, "Yep, my marketing plan is, and I'm going to do." And I thought it shouldn't be that easy.
Yeah,
it feels like I've gone into like just automation mode,
business as usual.
Yeah, business as usual. I know what to do. And I thought that should be the end of it. If there isn't a passion and a drive to innovate, there isn't a passion and drive to say something new should happen now, then most likely I shouldn't be the person running the organization. Which is also a funny story is that when I did finally part, and this shows like what our kind of charity organizations are like. I got call after call, message after message saying, what happened? Almost looking for gossip. I was like, nothing. I'd been there a decade now, and I thought, it can't be business as usual. This is Allah's work, and it must warrant something else. I was like, no, something must have happened. Did you get kicked out? This is your organization. It's like, no, it's not. It's just, we've just parted with it. That's perfectly all right. And I was even there to kind of make sure the new CEO, I helped recruit the new CEO. I was making sure that Asim knew what was going on, and he was comfortable and all the rest of it. But I think, look, there's frustrations among lots of different, like when you look at charities, look at mosques, look at all this sort of stuff, there's lots of frustration because we haven't moved on. And it's interesting because I was looking at a lot of this stuff and thinking, what's the root cause? What's the root cause of us being a bit stagnant, or just, in your terms, just flatlining? And I thought, well, most of this is to do with, not being uncomfortable. Like, just got used to being comfortable now.
Yeah.
And I was talking to my dad about this, and he said everything. I shared this idea with him. He said everything that we had from the age of, for him, from the age of like 11, everything was uncomfortable. Like his whole life was based on being in an uncomfortable situation. At the age of 11, he was selling fruit in the market. Yeah. At the age of 13, 14, he'd made it to this country, and he was going into school where he didn't know the language and what was going on. At the age of 16, he started working in a factory. My dad doesn't read or write any language. So like even directions to get to Dewsbury or in Bradford, right, which is a half an hour away. He had to catch 2 buses and he had it written on his hands just in case he missed it, or you could ask somebody, that's the bus I need to go to, because he just didn't know what to do, right? All his life he's been uncomfortable. Yeah, only now I think he's getting comfortable with his own skin and everything else. But all that process has been uncomfortable. Setting up the first mosques in the country has been uncomfortable. Getting halal meat in and struggling with that, struggling with the NFs, struggling with far right groups, has all been uncomfortable. And I think where we're at as a community now, we've just become comfortable. We're comfortable running the mosque. We're comfortable running the charities. We're comfortable just going to the supermarket, not learning anything new. We've just been comfortable. And even when we look at the future and think, well, who's going to take the podium from us?
Yeah.
Who next? Who are these young people that are going to be filling our seats, and who are the next guy? They don't seem to have that hunger. Yeah, or a lot of them don't.
Yeah.
Maybe the ones I've just spoken to, right? They don't seem to have that hunger because, again, they seem to be saying, well, I just want to be comfortable more than anything else.
So how do we change that?
Just get used to being uncomfortable. I had a short chat with Ibrahim Rasool, as you know, the South African ambassador to the US.
Oh, right.
That he left the US and got greeted as, or went back to South Africa as a hero, got a hero's welcome. I had a chance to speak to him in April and I said, what advice would you give to parents that are raising children? What one quality can they build in them to make sure that they were going to be fit for the future? Yeah. And he says, just make sure they're uncomfortable all the time. He said, just make sure they're uncomfortable. And it's remarkable because I've been having a lot of these kind of thoughts myself and discussions, and then here this man was saying that 100%, just make sure they're uncomfortable, because as soon as they start getting comfortable with stuff, they're not learning, they're not in a new environment, and they're not going to be able to adjust to anything new that happens in the world. They're going to be like, I know how to do stuff.
So on this theme of uncomfortable, let's go back to the charity CEO. He says, look, I'm now fully on board with you, Saj. I don't think we should just be doing food packs, but I've got 500 people or 1,000 people coming to this event, where at some point I'm going to have to get up and I'm going to do a bit of a pitch, and I need to raise some money. What's the messaging that I can put across to sell a much harder concept? And let's say we think that the sell is raising awareness about the Palestinian cause, and maybe there's like a percentage of people who still don't have affinity for Palestine, and we want to increase that.
I'll be as harsh as I can, yeah. I'm Northern as well, right?
Yeah.
So that's my excuse for anything that goes off script, right? I genuinely think that those people are not the ones that we're having the conversation with.
Okay.
Like if you're still sat here and still thinking, I've got £10 to donate and I want it to go to a food pack for Gaza, then maybe don't have the fundraising event and maybe don't invite those people.
Yeah.
But I'm saying maybe that's like the charity first needs to look at and think, well, you know what, if we are doing this, then maybe the events are the wrong thing to do.
Yeah.
Right. If we're doing events, then maybe the people that we're inviting are the wrong people that we're inviting. Maybe we need to start inviting different people to those events. And I think the biggest worry the charities have is the bottom line. That's unfortunate. Is okay. I remember when I started in the charity sector, the 2 questions I used to get asked again and again, which absolutely used to annoy the hell out of me, right? What's your income and how many people do you employ?
Yeah.
And I said, who cares? What difference does it make? You know, what difference does it make? Because at the moment you judge the quality of the charity and say, oh, mashallah, Ummah Welfare Trust have done 65 million this year, and Al Khair have done 47 million, like almost like they're not as good as Ummah Welfare Trust now. It has no bearing on the quality of work. And I've seen some of the quality of the work that goes on out there, Ibrahim. It's just like, probably share with you after the podcast, right? But it's crazy. Like you think these guys, mashallah, 40, 80 million, whatever the hell they are, that's the quality of their work.
Yeah.
And well, it has no bearing on any of that stuff. But I think just look at the whole ecosystem. I always say just start again and say, if we were going to raise money for non-food stuff, what would we do?
Let me put it another way, right? We've been doing this fund, which kind of does this kind of thing, right? Where we're talking to our high net worth investors.
So why didn't you do a fundraising event and invite Jav and Rash to give 20 quid? You didn't, right? Because you did some automatic marketing thing and said, this is not the audience, this is the audience, right?
Yeah. True. So, but then the question now is, we raised 250K a few years ago, 2 years ago. Yeah. This year was 500K. I'm getting onto the charity treadmill. I'm like, it is true that if you do have more money at some level, you can do a bit more with it, right? So I'm now thinking I should try and we probably won't do it, but if we wanted to grow this from an impact perspective and increase the funds that we raise, what would be a good way for me to think about the content that we can create around it, or the digital marketing that we do? I don't know. Is digital marketing even a suitable means, you think, for this? Islamophobia, tackling that, civic advocacy, things like think tanks, all of that kind of stuff. Funding reports on how much bias there is within the BBC regards to Palestine, etc., that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and I think, look, any high net worth individual, as you're probably used to, like they're most interested in impact and sustainability. They just want to know that if I've given you some money, can it be sustained and can you carry on with it? And is it having an impact? And I think the quicker you can start showing some impact, the better. If you look at the case study of Equi, for example, the first real Muslim think tank in the country, it has raised the money recently. So there is an appetite, just like, your income has increased for your zakat fund. But very quickly, it was able to say, this is what we've achieved. We've published this many papers. We've done this many reports. We've had this many guests come in. We've had a dinner at Parliament. We've also met with these ministers. And all of a sudden, the story seems to all right, this is all adding up now. The next phase for them is to actually start showing some results. Like, okay, these are inputs. What we have as outcomes on the other side. But I'm saying where you're probably sat now is you need to show a lot more input. Like, we've done this, this has happened, this has happened, this has happened. I think with high net worth individuals and all my experience of raising funds from them in the past, as long as they're updated, as long as they can see that you're trust, you're reliable, you're taking this as a responsibility, they'll continue to fund it. And even, say high net worth, sometimes we don't know what that means. What does that mean? 10 grand or 100 grand, right? But there's so much of the general public that will support alternative ways to support Palestine now. Just alternative means if you've got an alternative saying, okay, this is also supporting Palestine, they're happy to do that. And they're not necessarily looking at just food packs. There is this change in the way that people are looking at this stuff.
I want to talk about Manza, but before I do that, the last question I want to ask is, should we even be raising money for Palestine?
I think at least 50% of charities in the UK should shut down. And I'm not saying that as a general statement or a niche statement just for Muslims, but I think generally, the number of wasted resources, the amount of duplication in our industry, another charity raising more funds separately to give it to the same supplier so that they can deliver in the same way, just with a different hat and a different badge and a different box. It just doesn't make sense whatsoever.
Why did they do it?
I'm not sure. Like, I remember when I started Charity Right, I literally went knocking on several doors saying, and we were focused on Sudan, if you remember. I was like, I want to do this work in Eastern Sudan. This is what it needs to look like. This is what I want to do. This is the way that I want to go about doing it in schools. Can you deliver the project? I'll raise the money. And they're like, yeah, I'm not sure. Yeah, go away and raise some money first. But I wanted quite a unique approach to the whole thing, right? And only after a lot of sort of thought, et cetera, would we then said, all right, let's set up a charity, right? And I remember even the first early board meetings, the board members were asking the same question. Should we continue as a charity? Should we continue as a charity? Now, I don't know many charities, and I've sat on a few board meetings that are having that discussion about, do we need to cease existing? Like, are there other players in the market that can take on this now? Do we need to have more people? Unless you're doing something unique, you should question yourself, I guess. Yeah. Nobody's going to tell you to, I've told you to stop, but nobody's going to force you to stop. Yeah. But you should ask that question. So, and I think
what is it? Why is it? Is it because I don't think it's a pay thing. I don't think they get paid particularly well. Is it an ego thing? Is it just a lack of self-awareness thing? Is it that they get started on doing some good cause, raising money, and then they realize, oh, we've got so much, and now we need to professionalize, and then they end up in the same places, deploying to the same things?
Yeah, I think most of these charities start off with good intentions. They started off with it was a project raising money for another charity, and it's got out of hand, and then so actually now that we've got 1.4 million or whatever it was overnight, we need to probably just set up our own charity. It just seems like a logical next step, which is absurd, right? Why is that the logical next step? Like, it should go to a charity, go back to your day job and carry on. Like, you've done a good deed, alhamdulillah, I'll accept it and move on. But it just seems like, that's just been the natural next step for so many people. And even, charities that I've spoken to in the UK that were, they were a food bank in the UK, and they were raising money to UK projects only. And then when Gaza happened, they decided to start raising money for Gaza. It's like, why? There's so many other causes. Just signpost. Why have you started raising money yourself? But it came from a good place. I don't doubt that at all. It's always from a good place. But somebody should be there saying, stop, don't do it. So if you know charities, you should tell them, don't set up another charity for Palestine. For any cause now. At the moment, I think unless you're doing something completely unique, unless you're focused in on one thing, like Reed Foundation, great example, only build schools. That's their focus. As long as they continue with that and they don't say, well, actually now we're going to start, doing wells and everything else. Great. Just do that and just do it well. Charity Right, school feeding program, carry on. It's unique. It just focuses on one thing, carry on. But we need more charities that focus in on like that rather than generalist charities that are just doing everything and anything, you know.
How much is a typical charity? Let's say you've got a charity that's, I don't know, turning over 10 million. How much does it cost to run a charity like that? Just the costs.
This whole, you know, what's the limit on language and stuff here? Obviously, I know you've got quite a professional setup here. Tell me if I
We'll
cross
bleep
the
you
line.
out. We'll bleep you out.
All right, okay. So my whole problem with this stuff, right, is that like we've created this, you know, self-imposed sort of limits on some of this stuff. Now, you know, I know. Again, it started from a good place with Ummah Welfare Trust saying 100%, you know, charity and all the rest of it. We don't want to take anything, mashallah, and it was probably from a humble place and all the rest of it, and try to.
And they've got a business model as well, right?
Yeah, and then it's just put pressure on the whole ecosystem now to say if you're not 100%, people are questioning why. Well, they can do it. And there's like, if you just look at the logic of it, is that I've got some funds that I want to get deployed in Palestine, yeah, or Sudan, and here's my £10, and I want to give it to you. I don't want you to charge me for then going out and distributing yourself, because I can't be bothered figuring out like how that stuff works, and I don't want to give it locally to just the guy on the street, but I want it to go to Sudan, but I want you to take care of all the responsibility and the reporting, and I want a 40-page report for my £10.
For free.
For free. Like, it doesn't make any sense at all, right? So, like, don't set up a charity. If you are setting you up and you're hell-bent on setting you up, then definitely don't go with this 100% fiasco. Like, I don't know what that means.
Yeah.
You know, we do shoot ourselves in the foot, you know, and I think it's only the Muslim community has this whole concept of 100% charity, right? Like, no, everybody else believes in governance and making sure you've got a good foundation and making sure you've got good people working for you. You know, and
They've got good salaries as well in these mainstream charities.
yeah, but I think you do need to have those, right? Like, our frustration sometimes is like, oh, look at this Islamic Relief CEO. I'm not saying Islamic Relief, I'm just using them as a, oh, look at his CEO salary. It's like, yeah, but if he's managing
not even
like,
that much.
yeah, and if he's managing 40, 60, 100, 200 million, I'd probably want him to get paid more.
Yeah.
You know, like, what were you expecting? You know, and you see them all the time, right? I get these WhatsApp messages still on certain groups. They're saying, head of marketing, fundraising, communications, 22.5 grand, must have 5 years experience. It's like, you know, they'll blackmail you and thinking, you know, do it for feasibility. Yeah, this is for Allah's sake, and Palestinians are dying and you're worried about money. It's like, all right, chalo, they're starving. I'll make my family starve as well. Like, let's do that. It doesn't make any sense at all. But yeah, like, there's lots of stuff that we shot ourselves in the foot with some of this stuff. What does it cost to run a charity properly? 25%, 30% of your income, and I guess that's going to be a lot higher when you're a smaller charity than when you are a bigger charity.
So the reason I asked that is because what we're raising, like $500 million a year, $1 billion, I don't know.
$500 million leaves the country, so we're raising a lot more than that. Remember, all kind of remittances privately to my uncle back home and all the rest of it, and cash that goes over, and you know,
let's say $1 billion, right?
Yeah.
So $1 billion, and we conservatively we think 200 million of that at least is the baseline expense of running the Muslim charitable sector.
Yeah,
quite a thought, isn't it?
I shared with
200 million.
Yeah, it's a lot, right? And then it's constrained as well because you're given to a certain cause and they only do certain parts of work, so then it's all kind of disjointed. And I remember I shared with Sheikh Sohail Hanif one evening. I just messaged him saying, what would it do you think a Baitul Mal is a good idea? And he sent me this like 8-minute voice message back, right? I was like, all right, this is plausible. But I was like, everybody should just give their zakat to a single body in the UK.
Yeah.
The single body then can distribute it to Islamic Relief to go and do this, Muslim Aid to go do that, Charities to go give out meals in Sudan, and it can make a whole thing. And you know, members of that could be from different charities and all the rest of it. But it was a single body, and laymen like me didn't get to decide on how £1 billion was going to be distributed. We just gave our £10 and we went quiet and we went back to our day jobs and back home and carried on with our lives. But there was a body there that was going to be looking at the total affairs and what we wanted to be involved with. And it would be able to give out money for policy, for advocacy, for think tanks, for everything else, as well as media campaigns, as well as, you know, freeing slaves in wherever country. Like
Mauritania.
It could do all of that.
Yeah.
From a single place. And there would be so much saving. Like if all those other people were just partners and you just paid each partner to go and do their work. But in, you know, like if you just look at maps sometimes and I say, I did this exercise for Eastern Sudan. I said, with the charities, I said, can we just put a pin on where you're working in Sudan? I was like, every charity's got an office in Sudan. Muslim Bayt has got an office in Sudan. Islamic Relief have got an office in Sudan. I'm sure you've got an office in Sudan. Charities, right, we're looking to open this. I said, there's no work happening. Everybody seems to have an office here, right? And if you start looking like what we're doing, you've gone to do the distribution one day. I've gone to do the distribution the second day. It's like, what the hell's going on? I genuinely have been somewhere where, you know, he's taking off one T-shirt, ready to put my T-shirt on. I'm like, Yeah,
Mad.
we probably shouldn't be here. Like, if there's already people doing the work, maybe I should just support them and, and go do something else. But
Sajad, you've got a lot of frustrations.
oh yeah, rants and frustration.
Which frustration led to Manza?
Oh, Manza was born out of frustration, bro. Yeah, this is just a rant and a rant and a rant. This is just like the video version of
The Uber
of
rant.
Yeah, Uber rant. So this was, I guess, running Charities Right, being involved with Mercy Mission, when NZF in the early days, etc., etc. I remember even NZF, when we were looking at a marketing agency, there was a couple of people that we had on paper, but at that point it was okay. And then I remember even the logo was created by a non-Muslim guy. Like, he's passed away sadly. But he had, we had to sit with him for ages trying to tell him, like, all right, so this is zakat. Zakat is, and he's like, all right, yeah, I get it. He was a northern, but that's my accent. But look, this was the kind of place that we were in. And every time we had a Mercy Mission campaign, every time we had something for Charities Right, I was always looking for a marketing agency that I didn't have to explain. This is the 27th night, this is the 25th night. This is the bittersweet moment at the end of Ramadan, where Ramadan is finished and it's Eid tomorrow. I'm crying. Why are you crying? Well, it's supposed to be happy because you Eid tomorrow. No, I'm quite upset that I'm not fasting and starving myself. Like, doesn't make sense, right? But somebody who just got all that stuff, but at a very basic level. But then all the other stuff, we just didn't have an agency that did that. And I thought, well, I've been in marketing before, worked in a marketing agency, left to try and do something better and for humanity, for the community and all the rest of it. So I know that. And I think the transition for me from Charities Right to Manza was easy as well, because I knew exactly what I wanted to do next. I was like, I need to go set up this marketing agency and make sure that any Muslim organization that is looking to raise the bar, and I think this is where it's important to raise the bar and actually go and find a step change, will be the backing partners for that, will be the growth partners, will be the marketing partners, the branding partners, whatever they need to be able to make sure they can get there. And I was also hell-bent on making sure that we had then the team that will be able to deliver that. And I don't mean it in any way disrespectfully, but we've worked with marketing agencies, quote unquote. That's, again, it's Jav, Rash, who've learned how to do digital marketing. They know how performance marketing works, and they know how meta works, and they can help go deliver your ads. We've worked with people that are web agency and they know how to build a website, and they're really good at that, and they go and do that bit. We work with people that are really good graphic designers, and they can make you a really nice poster, and they can do all that bit. We never have had an agency from the Muslim community. And I'll explain why it's important for the Muslim community. We've never had an agency that's taken a holistic approach and said, okay, strategy first, and then everything else that you need doing, it'll get done. Yeah. So alhamdulillah, we went out and searched for the best talent within the Muslim community. We're still on that search, and I don't think that search is ever going to end. I'm still discovering people thinking, oh my God, this guy's great. How can I offer this guy a job at some point? And it's a convincing process as well. As soon as we start getting some wins under our belt and we start, that's what we've been behind, then great. I think more people will join. But that frustration of just not having a Muslim-led marketing agency or an agency.
You're looking at one, right? You're looking at some of your work already.
Some of our work, yeah.
I'm wearing some of your...
But that was the real frustration, I think, of like, okay, well, who could do this work for us? And again, not disrespecting anybody who's running a marketing agency at the moment. I haven't met a real Muslim-led marketing agency. I've met people that do lots of great work in lots of small areas and niche areas, and they're marketing agencies, but a strategic brand communications agency that can do all the other stuff that Huzaifa does. I forget tech all the time, and Huzaifa corrects me wrong. Also tech as well. We do tech as well. Can do all that from end to end. We really haven't got that within our community, and I think
you guys have. It's been quite exciting to see the journey, because we were one of, I think, the first, if not one of the early ones.
You were the first real client that we had, yeah, I would say.
And it's been brilliant to see since then all of the different. It feels like every decent looking Muslim brand or website that I come across, I dig behind the surface, and Sajad Huzaifa pops up.
Yeah, not quite yet, not quite there yet, but yeah, it's definitely going to be one of those cases.
MTF was really good.
Yeah.
Did you launch good?
We launched good over Ramadan, yeah.
Yeah. That was quite cool.
We did Bayina Institute.
Bayina, that was nice.
That was interesting. We're currently doing offer.
Oh, right. Oh, yeah, the yellow stuff, right?
The yellow stuff.
The F1.
We're not behind the yellow stuff, but we're behind all the stuff that followed after the yellow stuff, alhamdulillah.
With the F1 stuff.
Yeah, the F1 stuff, and currently looking after their brand. But I think, look, this is where it's interesting. Like, some of those people were like, okay, we do actually want to get to this level. What does it look like? And then the work, the effort, the energy that goes into making sure that strategically we're aligned, and we've got all the research done, and we've done all those things that you would expect from a just a regular agency in the Western world. You
Yeah.
know, we've ticked those boxes.
Yeah.
And again, in my hunt, I was like, okay, can we find an agency that could compete with, you know, if I said, for example, Leeds top 50 agencies, is there a single agency that's led by a Muslim that would have insights? Nobody. Manchester, nobody. Even if I went to like Tower Hamlets and said, all right, out of the 50 biggest agencies in East London, Shoreditch and all this included, like which ones are the ones that are Muslim that are leading the way?
No one.
There's no one, right?
Yeah.
And ours is a conscious choice to say, well, actually, we don't want to work on non-Muslim brands. We want to actually work on Muslim brands or brands that benefit the Muslim community.
Yeah.
So even if you're a non-Muslim brand, but you want to speak to Muslims, we'll help you do that with respect, with dignity, with honor, with making sure that you've done it in the best possible way rather than anything else. So yeah, that's been our frustration. Not much of a rant, but most of the times we come across people that, you know, they've kind of had the same experience. They wanted a Muslim-led marketing agency, and they've kind of opted for lots of different stakeholders to and then manage them themselves. They've never had an agency that could get behind them.
How difficult has it been to run this agency where you're coming up with almost like a new kind of concept that's never been done before? And I know I've seen you guys grow. There's been financial stresses, right, along the way. How's that been as an experience? How did you get through it?
Like any other business, bro, it's stressful as anything. Like you're starting something new, and you're trying to recruit people and bring in business, recruit more people, bring in business. Recruitment is just non-stop with a start. I still say we're a startup, and, you know, I get corrected sometimes in the office saying, we've been going 2 years, are we still a startup? It's like, yeah, we're going to be a startup for 5 years, I think. We've just adopted that structure. But yeah, there's been days where you're thinking, all right, how am I going to make the end of the month? There's going to be days where you're thinking, well, all right, we should go and hire 50 more staff this week. But it's just, and I think where we find that we would have a little bit more of a struggle is that the kind of people that we would have to bring in to recruit, we have to recruit them first before we go out to get work.
Yeah.
It's just so hard to find. I think a social media manager, we've been looking for one. We've interviewed probably tons. We've been looking for one for 6 months, just one.
Yeah.
One to add to our team for 6 months. That role has been open. It's been with agencies. It's been on LinkedIn. It's been on, you know, WhatsApp groups, wherever you have it. It's been on the MTF group, and we haven't managed to find this one single person to join our group. So, where traditionally, if you're working in a regular agency, you would just call up the marketing agency, and they would nick somebody from another agency, and, you know, Deborah would join, and off you go. We don't have that luxury, right? We take our time to be able to figure out who we can bring on. So even like our journey has been now, we're at 24 staff. As a team, we're 24. Majority still sit in Bradford.
Nice.
And just getting them recruited, and even 2 people actually moved to Bradford, or in the process moving to Bradford. Look at that. We're creating a real a real home for ourselves.
Northern powerhouse.
Yeah, Northern powerhouse. I mean, it's not moving from far. but Bradford's a step up. Let's just say that. But that whole ecosystem has more stress because you're working with finding Muslim talent that's in that space. And by the way, our team is not completely Muslim, right? We've got loads of different people from loads of different backgrounds. We don't just do that. Where I think there needs to be cultural relevance, you need to be able to have that. If you know, I remember speaking to somebody about an ad for a breast cancer charity, and the creative was, and they were particularly trying to look at the South Asian community so they could come forward and screen for breast cancer a lot earlier than they would probably be doing. Yeah. So typically, like my mom's age, 65 or whatever, right? Or people that were finding language as an issue. And the creative that they had for it was a husband, wife, and child sat together, and you know, they're having their curry with a knife and fork. Should be eating with their hands, but they got that wrong. But they're having their curry, and they're dressed in all their, you know, all that sort of stuff, and sari and everything else. And it's just a frank conversation over dinner. You know, child, you should be checking yourself for breast cancer. Like, do you have any idea of what that environment is like? I said, I remember my feedback to them. So, have you got any feedback? I said, yeah, my dad would cut off his right arm before he had that conversation with any females in my house. Like, just get it. Like, and you can't.
With his knife and fork, he would cut off.
We just sat there thinking, you know, like, it's like, you know, from Goodness Gracious Me back in the day when we had this. So it was like, this dal is fantastic. That's one of those dal is fantastic moments where you just look at that and think, all right, you know what? I can't engage with this. I'll book a flight and go somewhere rather than engaging this. This is like a thing to do. But that's not something that you can teach.
Yeah.
So if you're a back-end developer, Muslim, non-Muslim, whatever doesn't make a difference. But if you're the person who's saying, well, actually, based on this cultural insight that I have of how Muslims behave, specifically on the day of Eid, I know a campaign that I can make, and it can be about falling asleep at 1 o'clock on the sofa, like every dad will on Eid day, because you've just had a massive, ginormous breakfast, brunch, lunch, all in one. That's a cultural insight that you can't get from, reading a book, or I don't think it's documented anyway, but we know that's what happens, right? So many people fall asleep at 1 o'clock on Eid day. So like our stresses, I think, have been more to do with making sure that we can find the right people, rather than, like, even now I think there's like 6 positions open. Still trying to find those right people to join our team.
I wanted to ask you, Saj, a question that I ask everyone, at least these days. What is your number? How much is enough?
Yeah, I saw that you did that with other people, so I came prepared. I don't have a number, bro. I genuinely don't. Like, I'll share this with you just because, not from like, oh, look at me, I'm so pious and all that. But I think I was making more money when I was 26, 7 than I do now, than I have over the last 15 years. So it's never been about, oh, I need to make money. I think one of the fears that I have, genuinely, a fear that I have, is that I die in a state where I was chasing money rather than thinking about something more important. I remember when I left Charities, I was like, if I don't set up Manza, I can't ever imagine myself in a job where I'm not adding value to Islam, not adding value to Muslims, not adding value to our ecosystem, to our, and all this sort of stuff. And the fear is that you die at a time where maybe you're just chasing a bit of money. I think that's the problem that most people have, unfortunately, is that they're there, they want to do something, just haven't figured out how to leave what they've currently got to move on. And the reality is, bro, like, I don't think it makes a big difference to your life. It definitely doesn't. I remember one of my first salaries as a guy working for a not-for-profit, after I'd paid for my kids' school fees, and my kids went to private school as in the primary in Bradford. There are those things. I was really struggling. Genuinely, I was like, oh, okay, this is this is not going to work.
I need to go to my welfare trust then.
Yeah, like, this is great. It was probably more than what most charities paid. But look, I was there and I was like, oh, this is not going to work. I want to be in a deficit. Like, what the hell am I doing here? And I remember having some side hustle, side gigs, just to make sure that I could keep things moving and all the rest of it. And I was a 30-year-old man with kids and wife and house and, home finance and all the rest of it. So those things have never really, been the reason why I've done stuff. Look, everybody's interested in making money. I've got, like, all right, yeah, I'm invested here, I'll do that, I'll do this and and I'll make sure those things are going, but never with, at the detriment of, like, my true calling, my true, like, okay, this is the reason I exist, this is the reason I'm still here. Like, I had an interesting conversation with one guy, and he said, oh, I just want to retire and go to Dubai and do all that stuff. And I said, what you do and your life, I think that's what you should do. You shouldn't stay in the UK. He said, well, why do you say that? I said, well, if you're not adding any value to Muslims, any value to Islam, if your Islam is not stronger here, and all the rest of it, then you should probably leave. You should go and find a nice place to live. Like, why are you sat here? Like, I wouldn't stay here if this work wasn't able, right? And I'm not saying that, well, if you're a taxi driver, you go somewhere else. No, like, a lot of times, for example, if you're a taxi driver, you pray 5 times a day, you give dawah, you're involved in the mosque, and every time somebody sits and thing and you're having a conversation about Islam and what you've done and you're adding value. But I'm saying, if you're working for a call center for a bank on mortgages or something like that, or whatever it might be, and that's your life, and you don't go to the mosque to pray, and you don't do anything else, you don't add any other value in any other way to your community and to society, then bismillah, go Dubai, go Timbuktu, go, I don't know, go back to Pakistan or India or Bangladesh, or go to Jamaica, go somewhere nice. Like, why would you stay here in this weather and all the rest of it, right? That's my take on that. Sorry, it's a roundabout way of answering your question, and I obviously interjected a rant in there.
So maybe the answer is, what is your number? It's basically whatever you have today is good enough.
Yeah, I don't think my life changes unless I get, like, 10 million pounds. I don't think anything about my lifestyle will change. I don't think it has changed over my salary's fluctuated for the last whatever, and I don't think it's made a blind bit of difference to what I'm able to do or what I do. I'm still able to take my family on holiday once every couple of years. I still have same-ish kind of cars. I still live in Bradford. I still eat out tons. I still have loads of social gatherings.
Yeah. Alhamdulillah.
I'm happy. There's no issue with it. It's a weird place because it's like people are, you're just making stories up, man. What's your number? Tell us your number. I generally don't have one. I just thought that I'm not worried about money, and that number isn't a big number. I think I'm there now. Yeah. if things carried on like they are now, I think it'll be all right.
Alhamdulillah.
That doesn't mean, by the way, Ibrahim, that I'm not in pursuit of making sure that there's more wealth.
Yeah.
I think, I always said that if where I'm at the moment, what I want to do is be able to make sure that for Manza especially, that we get to choose who we work with, not the other way around. At the moment, most people are coming to us and saying, can you do this work? And I'm like, yeah, if it pays the bill. And it's broadly in line with what I want to do, I'll do it. But more importantly, I want to get to a stage where with Manza, me and Huzaifa are pretty much aligned on this, that we can handpick, that we've got people saying, actually, we want Manza to do our work. And we're like, yeah, what fits in with our purpose for creating Manza? And it's like, yeah, this one fits. This is what we should be doing. That's probably more important for me than anything else.
Financial side. Saj, it's been a pleasure and an honor.
I'm sure it has.
I'll see you in Bradford.
Fantastic, brilliant. Thank you. Just this ad, bro. I don't know why we didn't do this in Bradford.
I know.
Like you're from Manchester, and then I was
we all came down. It's because of these guys.
These guys saying,
Thank you to you.
Pin
the blame on them.
All right, brilliant. Thank you.